Hi guys, Mighty Mr. Mustache here, the mightiest mustache in the universe. And today, I'm going to do something a little different. It's not going to be video games, it's not going to be shaving. I'm actually going to start a project where I intend to soup up and sort of Frankenstein my electric scooter. I bought this with almost dead batteries on the cheap from someone who just didn't feel like getting new batteries. And instead of replacing it with the basic ones that came along with it, which were three 12-volt batteries generating 36 volts and about 420 watts, so 12 amps. They were on their last legs. They couldn't get it to go much faster than about 20-25 kilometers an hour, which for you folks in the States is maybe 12 miles an hour. It was kind of embarrassing. It was not much fun putting along. I'm going to try and do something new. This will be done in a couple of stages and will require a couple of new parts. So the first thing I need to do is make the new battery. A battery is a series of cells, and for this I've bought 5 new cells. These are 12 volt by 7 amp hour. So the 7 amp hour determines how long they last, and the 12 volt, which I will wire in series, will give me 60 volts when I'm done, for a total of 420 watts to the hub motor. It's not more wattage than the motor can handle, but it is higher voltage, so I should get more speed at the cost of some distance. So I might not be able to go as far on a charge, but I will definitely go faster. If this works, my next stage, and I have another set of these batteries, is to make a second one, wire it in parallel. So I'll still be generating 60 volts, but the 7 amp hours will jump to 14, delivering 840 watts to the motor, which should still be able to handle it, and effectively doubling my runtime and hopefully significantly increasing my power. I'm going to take you along step by step as I do this, because what the heck, man, it looks like it'll be a lot of fun. And if I fail at it, you'll have a good laugh at me, and if I succeed, you'll know how to do it yourself. If that succeeds, then I'm going to try next year, probably next season, to up the motor to something with a gear and see if I can get some really crazy speeds out of it. Now, bear in mind that depending on where you live, doing this to your bike might make it illegal to have on the road. You might not be allowed at all to modify it, so make sure that you know what the law from your local motor vehicle department is. The law here where I am is if mine goes past a certain speed or has passed a certain wattage, it has to be registered in the same category as something like a 50cc scooter, gas scooter, a small motorcycle, which, isn't a big deal. You just put a plate on it, and I think you can get a license to drive them here when you're 14, and any car driver's license covers that. And again, that's assuming I can even get that much speed out of it. I'll be pretty happy if I can do the legal limit, which is about 32 kilometers per hour, or 18 or 19 miles an hour for you guys in the States. Let's get started. The first thing you're going to need is your batteries. After that, you'll need some wire. And the most important thing when you buy the wire is to check and see how many amps it can handle. This wiring is rated up to 10 amps. And that means my 7 amp batteries don't run any risk of melting them. All right, they can handle more. So most wire when you buy it is AC rated wire, not DC rated wire. Although you can buy plain old DC battery wire for automotive. That'll usually do a good job. For my purpose, AC wire comes paired. It comes with the left and right side, and I'm just going to split those because DC wiring is obviously single. And you'll need a wiring diagram that tells you how to wire things in series. And we'll do that because the last thing you want to do is cross-wire these batteries, put them on a charger, and have them explode on you. Cover everything in acid. These are sealed lead-acid batteries. They're typical, the same kind of batteries you find in a car. And yes, they do contain lead, and yes, they do contain sulfuric acid, so it's probably a bad idea to screw with them if you don't know what you're doing, or if you haven't at least got yourself a wiring diagram. All right, so all I'm going to do is split this wire down the middle so that I can use double the amount. It's coated, not a big deal. I'm also going to be soldering my wires to each of my leads, right? So on here you have a positive and a negative lead, and I will be soldering my connections to the wire. You can use clamp-on clips, you can use hot glue, or you can also use, I believe, silicone gel, which solidifies, but for the amount of abuse you get in a moving vehicle, you really want a solid solder connection rather than just something that can shake loose. So we're going to get to that in a minute. For the moment, the other thing you want to do when you're soldering and you're working with batteries is wear something to protect your eyes. They don't have to be crazy, you know, $500 safety glasses, because I mean solder is pretty safe stuff, but it is hot and it can splatter, and obviously you want to be careful while using it. After that, all I need to do is run them up in series. I'm going to pause the video for a second while I get my wiring diagram out, which I forgot inside, and then we're going to figure out how to wire 5 batteries in series to produce 60 volts. We're back. I went and got a diagram ready, and I know how I'm going to work. This is the original case that the batteries came in, and it comes with a built-in charger and at least a charger port and a fuse, so I'm not going to change that. I've got my wire for one side positive and one side negative, and when you wire in series, you literally run from this to your positive terminal, then out the negative to the next positive, out that negative to the next positive, and I will show you as we go along step by step. And then the last thing you do is you connect your group of cells, this time 5 of them, to either end of these, and you have yourself a complete battery that should stack up to 60 volts and 7 amp hours. This is the individual battery, okay? Here we go. So, to start with, I have 5 of them. I'm going to start with a couple of them. Here we go. And I will connect one from the positive of this one to the negative of this one. So what I'm going to do first is figure out how I'm going to line all 5 of them up in here. Okay, this may require a little chopping, a little moving stuff around, but in the end I want them all in here. Hopefully they'll fit. The only thing to remember is you can't mess with the batteries themselves, but whatever they sit in is not really your problem. Now, if I were to, let's say for the sake of argument, have one that sat this way instead, would that make my life any easier? And then like this, can I then turn one this way? Oh, almost. Like this, like this. How about one like that? Oh, it's so close, I bet. Just a little bit off. What else would it take to get them to fit in? Aha. And if not, then what I'm going to do is detach this and make a new case for them, because this is all I need. If I look in here, there's 2 screws holding that that charging plug, and then I'll just wire them into a new container, some sort of plastic box or cardboard box that I will build for them, maybe even something out of wood, anything that can handle the strain, and that will fit inside of that box over there, which I don't know if you can see it, but I will post a picture of it, is where the batteries sit in the scooter itself. In fact, while I've got it standing here, let me see if I can just stand the 5 batteries down here. Yeah? Okay, you can see it? Perfect. My producer, director, and daughter, who's back behind the camera, say hi.
Hi.
Is telling me that you guys can see what I'm doing. And so I'm going to stack my batteries. Oh, look at that. Look at that. This is exactly what I think I'm going to do. There. And then all I have to do is attach the charger port here to the side, right into the hard plastic of the main body, and then this here is the charging supply, no problem. When I come in with my main, I plug it in up here, and this goes into this. I should be all set. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set these up in here, and then I will be all set. But to start with, I'm going to start by wiring them one to the other so that I have a series, and then the last step will be to wire them to these 2 and then into the side, and then give them their first charge. That'll be the next thing. Now, this isn't the only thing that I have to do to rig this up. I'll be producing 60 volts, and inside of this, and I will show you in the next video, when I change the controller, I will show you the speed controller. This one is rated for 36 volts. I have to change it to match the voltage on this one. It's a little silver doodad, electric doodad, that's deep in the heart of this thing, and I'll have to show you how to take it apart and do that. But that should arrive tomorrow. Thank you, Amazon. And I want to be ready with my batteries. So you'll need, as we say, a soldering iron and somewhere to plug it in, unless it's gas powered. You'll need some solder. You'll need something to cover your eyes, just in case. It's not really dangerous to solder, but you know, better safe than sorry. You only get one set of eyes. And you'll need wire that can handle the power. As I said, this is rated to 10 amps, and if I try to do anything more, I'll get heavier wire, or I'll strip it, double it, tape it, and that should rate it for at least 15 amps. So the first thing I need to do is figure out how far each battery terminal goes from positive to negative to positive to negative, right? So when I'm coming in, I'm going to come in from my power source. So let's say this red one here, to this positive. Then I'm going to come out from that positive to this negative and over to this positive. The next one will go here, 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 and then this one will go back out. And that creates a loop that takes the power and voltage from each battery and runs it out. So 12, 24, 36, 48, 60 out. The batteries don't last any longer than an individual battery would last, but they produce 5 times the power. Okay, so here we go. We're going to strip a little bit of wire off of this. And you just go around the edge. Somewhere around here I probably have a professional set of wire strippers, but at the same time you can also just take a sharp knife and you grab it with your teeth usually and just peel a bit off. Okay, yeah, box cutter's good. You just pass it around quickly, just enough to cut through the plastic but not enough to cut through the copper. And if your hand's bad like mine, you can't grip anything, you will throw your tool. Hang on, I'll get my lighter ones here. There. Now, just grab the end of that and peel off this plastic, which is being difficult because of course it is, I'm on camera. But you just work your way around. All right. That's odd, I don't see any copper. Ah, now I see the copper. Aha. Maybe the very end of it didn't have any wiring in there. So what you want is about enough to cover the end of this, about a ½ inch, I guess. You want a good solid contact, and you want the copper to make a good solid contact. DC voltage, which is what we're talking about here, battery voltage is direct current, has a nasty habit of pushing stuff away. So if you have current running through the wire and it's not securely connected to the end, it'll push it off. It'll heat it up and it'll push it away in a big shower of sparks, which you do not want. All right, I'll get this first one done and then we'll do a little rapid cut where we wire one after the other, so you don't have to spend an hour watching me fight with this and solder it. Actually, give me just a sec. I am going to go get a knife. Are you having fun? I'm going to cut that out. You're not dressed enough to be on video. Here, no, I got it. Because that way you end up cutting some of the copper. The wire here is, the plastic around the wire is meant for some pretty heavy abuse. So it's a lot thicker than the stuff you might find. But there we go. Thank you very much. If you want, I can cut that video out. If you don't want to be showing on and wearing a tank top there. And my advice is always to give that copper a nice little twist. Okay? Then you solder your end, and before you do, you figure out where you're going to next. So I'm coming from my negative here to my positive here, and I want plenty. I don't want to be tight. I don't want it to be, I want these batteries to have some mobility. So I'm going to measure it here where I just tuck it into the little hole. and then I give it a little loop so I know I have enough, and even then I give it a little extra. That's why I have lots. Don't be afraid. You can always cut a little off, but you can't put it back on afterwards. Give yourself more than enough to start with, and again, you take your knife and you just roll it around. I put my thumb on the opposite side, which is a great way to cut your thumb, but when you have leathery hands like mine, you don't worry too much about it, and then you just pop it off. There. Bob is indeed your uncle. Now, easiest way that I think is to do this would be to pass my bit of copper through here, pass my copper wire through the end, pass my copper wire through this end, heat up my soldering iron, drop a nice ball of solder onto there, which cools within a few seconds, and that should do it. And then after that I got to hook here to here, here to here, here to here, and then out she goes. And then the whole thing can just go sit right in there, and I should be okay. So what I'm going to need to do now is unplug here, get some power, more power, awesome power, all of the power. Well, just enough to run a soldering iron anyway. And here we go. My brand new soldering iron, $19.99 at Canadian Tire. Home Depot for you folks in the States who've never heard of Canadian Tire. Plug her in. Always make sure that you have a safety place to rest it. Soldering irons come with usually a safety thing. As you can see, this one doesn't have a switch on or a switch off, so it gets very, very hot. It's got these little holes that you'll see around it so that you can touch it down here. But you would never want to touch it up here. How you tell it's working is you wait until it melts a bit of solder. It won't be too long. I don't imagine it will take more than a few seconds. At least I hope so. It would be an embarrassing video if I found out that my new soldering iron was a dud. You can also, if you're very brave, lick it and touch it. Mine's warm, it's not quite hot yet. Let's give it a minute. Now the next idea, as I said before, is if this works, I will be running 60 volts at 7 amp hours through the motor. All right, that gives you multiply the two to determine the wattage, and that's the total power going to the motor. That's 420 watts. With the old batteries, I actually got about 432, but with the low voltage, it meant it didn't have much speed. So if I can get good speed with the same wattage, then I'm going to double it. The next thing I'll teach you is how to connect this series of batteries to an identical one in something called parallel. And what that does, whereas the series takes the voltage and goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the parallel takes the amperage, so the duration of the battery, the 7 amp, and doubles that, or adds the two together. So 7 becomes 14. Is it still running? Okay. Now let's see if my soldering iron's hot enough. So when you're ready, you just put your solder down, touch it like that, and let it start to melt it. Now it's not doing that yet. This soldering iron is not a very expensive one, so it probably takes quite a while to get hot enough to melt solder. I'm getting a call. Ah, I heard a psst. It doesn't take much to melt solder, but this is some pretty thick, heavy solder. I do have some thinner stuff here. Maybe I'll see if I can work with that to begin with, just for the sake of the video. Solder is pretty much solder, but I like using thicker solder rather than having to melt tons and tons of it. But we'll start with one, and we'll see. There we go. It's melting beautifully now. The only problem with this is, of course, I'm going to have to melt a mountain of it. So what you do is you hold your soldering iron in place and just push the solder into it, and it'll form a ball. Yeah, this solder is melting very slowly because it's ultra thick. So I'll just use a whole bunch of this stuff. Solder used to be just lead. Now it's a combination of a few chemicals and metals. So no matter what, you're kind of going to want to be careful with it. It melts at a very low temperature. And there we go. That's on. And I'll do the same thing over here. Make sure I have quite a bit. Once again, just sit the soldering iron there and let the solder do the work. There. Solder cools in a second or two. When you put your soldering iron down, always make sure you put it down there or you'll melt a hole in your table. Now that's pretty strong. You see, I can actually lift the battery up by it. And that's a good solid connection that I'm not going to have to worry about. I'm going to pause the video here, connect the rest of these. Now that you've seen it once, you can figure it out the rest of the time. And then I'll show you how we stack it in, get the charger going, and we'll set them to charge. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm the aforementioned director, producer / daughter, and I'm basically just here to do stuff because Dad is useless and his hand won't let him do anything without throwing shit around. Okay. And Dad, I told you have to narrate because I don't actually know what I'm talking about, I just know how to do it.
Well, what you're going to do is finish connecting the last two leads, which go from the initial positive, that would be that red one that has nothing connected to it, and the final negative, which would be the black one at the far end. And my daughter here can point to those with the appropriately colored wire, and that will be connecting the charging port. It's also the power out to the motor. So it's power in when we charge, power out when we run. And so she's just going to snip off the end because the end had gotten overheated and exposed and the plastic around it was a little squidgy. After which we'll go over to the machine and take a look and see what exactly is going to happen in the battery box, in the battery housing, and how we're going to connect it. We're going to maybe try a couple of different things. And then again, tomorrow when the controller, when the speed controller shows up, we will show you how to change that out. There's 4 wires to reconnect there. And then we will be able to put this battery in. We'll have it charged up by then, and we will get it going. Hopefully by this time tomorrow, you will have an opportunity to see us actually taking some runs on this thing, taking a couple of trips around the block. What I'm going to do in a separate video, I guess, is to see how much distance I can get out of this by running around my neighborhood basically in something like a quarter-mile or half-mile loop until the batteries start to get weak and I actually start to lose power. With sealed lead acid batteries like this, you should not let them run all the way dead. These aren't deep cycle batteries like marine ones. If they go all the way dead, it lowers their lifespan. They don't get as many charges. You avoid obviously short circuit, recharge after use. This battery, according to its type, if I leave it run at its, let's say on its something that draws 12 volts and 7 amps, it's supposed to run for 20 hours. But I don't think that's necessarily true. And anyways, as I'm doing, I said, a bit of a jury-rigged Frankenstein's monster out of this thing. We're going to find out how things work. A lot of this is to see what works and what fails, and what we can do. If this does work and it's a success, I might actually, at the end of the season, sell this scooter with its adapted setup. And next season, I'll get another one, and I want to try using a high amperage 12 volt battery, like a marine battery or a car battery, and run that through a motor that provides more torque, and then use a gearing system, a sprocket and chain, to generate some pretty high speeds if I can. That'll be interesting. I've actually seen a few videos and discussion forums on converting a car's alternator into an electric motor. Look at that, she's got it done. She is the girl. Now, if you want to come and swap around here with me, I'm going to bring the bike over and I'm going to seat the batteries in. I'm going to ask my daughter here to take over the camera work by holding the actual camera. Pardon any shaking, but now we're going movement. I'm going to bring the bike around. By the way, this is my first test run of my USB microphone, which you can see on the table there. And wow, it's picking up great sound from anywhere. And so far, I don't think we've heard any wind problems either. So, for an inexpensive mic, once again, thank you Amazon for shipping it within a couple of days. I have to say I'm quite pleased. Now that I've got my battery series here, I'm going to unplug my soldering iron, let it cool down. It takes quite a while for them to cool down. You can see the color change in the end of the soldering iron. It was silver when we started, and it's sort of a coppery color now, heating up. Anyone who knows anything about steel work and forging will tell you that's a tempering of metal. It changes color that way. And blacksmiths actually know how their metal is set by how it's tempered, or what color it turns. Now, this is going to be tricky because I don't want to break any of these wire connections, but at the same time, see if I can get the whole thing over in one shot.
Put the horizontal one on top of the others, and then just place it when you put them in.
And this is why I have a clever daughter. Put the horizontal one on top and then put it back down afterwards. I think I also might wrap the whole thing in duct tape just to keep them together. But let's start by just putting these in. They're quite heavy. The whole set weighs a good 20 or 25 pounds. Because they are filled with liquid, and that liquid is sulfuric acid. And the doofus that I am went and did that. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take advantage of that by putting these 4 in and then soldering that last one in place. Right? The first thing I'm going to do is exactly what I said I'm going to do. I'm going to wrap these 4 in duct tape so that they stay together because they're very slippery. Give me a moment. I'm going to get some duct tape. Okay, here we are, back with the roll of the handyman's secret weapon, duct tape. We will put these 4 in, and then we'll put the 5th one into the side and re-solder the connections, which my daughter was so kind to solder for me the first time, and which I went and screwed up. Because what kind of father would I be if I didn't ruin her life?
Thanks, Dad.
Listen to her enjoying video games on her own channel, Non-Gamer Girl Plays.
Not my own channel, it's my own subgroup on your channel.
I suppose, yes, her own playlist on our family's channel. I mean, I know it's called Mighty Mr. Mustache, but you're my daughter. Give it a few years, you'll have one too.
Thanks, Dad.
If you enjoyed the video where I took a straight razor to my son's face and didn't get arrested for it, now we gave him a good clean shave, then stay tuned in the next day or so. Hopefully tomorrow, if the weather holds, I will be doing a self-shave video. And you can see some techniques for shaving yourself rather than another person, because you should probably be able to prove that you can shave your own face without turning it into a horrendous bleeding disaster of stitches before somebody else lets you near them. There we go. Just a couple of quick turns of duct tape to hold the back together, because yes, these are slippery as anything, and that's my excuse for dropping them. And I'm sticking to it. No, really, they are. The plastic is very slick. It's almost oily. So there wasn't much I could do once it started to go. Now, my negative over here is still pretty good. My battery here did not take any damage, falling on the nice soft wet ground from all the rain that we've had. I don't really see any problems here. I'm just going to take a knife or a pair of wire cutters and just clean a little bit of this old stuff off so that I don't have a short or a bad connection. Right? You can sand it a bit with a file. Just be very careful not to cut yourself. Don't go crazy, and don't cut the actual terminal. Just take a bit of that solder off. You can also, if you're brave or have some experience with it, you can heat the solder back up with a soldering iron and touch a damp rag to it or a paper towel, and it'll soak it up and take it away. So you have to be careful not to burn yourself. Hot solder will burn a serious hole right through your skin and into your thumb. And
I'm sure you're speaking from experience.
actually, no, I never managed to do that one, but I have seen people do it. It's not much fun. Out of all this stupid, crazy thing, that's why I'm going away.
Don't get metal clips in our coffee.
Oh, well, please. If that's what kills me, I deserve to die. There we go. So, over here now, I'm going to sit this way. And once I've got it properly wired in and connected, I'll determine how I'm going to pack those in and keep them from moving. Whether I'm going to build a custom box for them, which I might do. Or I'm just going to pack that in with some foam or, you know, foam rubber, and that might do it. So I plugged in my soldering iron again. I'm going to come over here and just reconnect this wire.
I like how at the beginning of your video you gave the safety talk about covering your eyes, and now you're completely ignoring it.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I should be covering my eyes. Thank you. There we go. That's because you were doing it and you wear glasses.
I don't think you did it the first time.
I probably didn't. But then again, I'm a masochist, and
No, you're not. You're an idiot.
well,
Don't be
that.
edgy.
There's that. Yes, you're right. I guess there's a fine line between masochist and moron. We'll start with that. I'm a moron and an accident, totally accident prone. And although I have to say the major accident where I wrecked my hand was not caused by me being an idiot. I literally just slipped on the ice. It's not like I was horsing around or doing anything I shouldn't have been doing. I didn't sleep on the work. I will hopefully be starting a video series where I chronicle my return to playing guitar. I played guitar for many years, stopped after I hurt my hand, because, well, a barely functioning left hand and the guitar don't mix very well. If you'd be interested in seeing that as a video series, let me know in the comments below. And I will chronicle the accident, the healing process, and how far I've gotten back into my favorite pastime and hobby, which is the guitar. I was actually fairly good at it, so if I can get back to even a portion of what I'm doing, I'll be content. I don't know if there's any interest out there for people to see that kind of thing, but if there is, I'll be happy to video it. So now we're just waiting for this soldering iron to come back up. Reconnect. Then we'll plug a charger, cross our fingers that these batteries don't overheat and explode because I've got them somehow badly connected. That would be terrible. But so far so good. It all looks like it's connecting. There we go. Let's get together. Let's make a connection. And that looks like it. Now, the next stage, I'm going to bring the power over and a power supply and start charging these batteries. And this part right here, as much as I've joked about my eyes or anything else, is where you want to be covering your eyes and being careful. As I said, lead and acid. You do not want to suddenly become a statistic. There you go. I will not misfigure you. Plug it into the source first. Then plug in your power. This one in particular has a fan built in and a cooling system. And of course, it's all written in Chinese. However, it does say 48 volts, 20 amps. So it has a lot of power. So we're going to be careful that we don't overcharge these batteries. We're going to charge it in probably 2-hour segments of plugging it and unplugging it until it is fully charged. It's running and it has power. I don't see the fuse has blown. What we'll do is we'll monitor these while I've got it going. There we go, my lights are on inside. And that'll be it. I will be back with the next video when I have the speed controller. I want to thank you for joining me on this. Well, obviously I'll edit out some of the flips and flops, but this has been an experimentation, so we don't know what we're doing. Well, I kind of know what I'm doing. I've done my research, and I have worked a little bit in this field, and I've done a little bit of study in science. So I'm not a complete moron as much as I might pretend to be sometimes. So don't start something like this without doing your own research. The internet is a great resource for this kind of thing. Know about wattage, voltage, amperage, know about batteries, know about how to connect them before you just go and do this, or else you will absolutely look like one of those people who gets doused in acid, because that's what will happen to you. Until then, I have been Mighty Mr. Mustache. This has been my daughter, and we want to thank you. Take care, guys.